Hello everyone, and here we are at Bill's house, and Bill doesn't want to be in the video, so I'm going to do the talking and Bill's going to be in the background. But we're here looking at Bill's idea of what he's done with his pot in the ground. And he's got one of these little composters. And Mara, can you bring that forward and show them this in here? And just show a close-up in there. And as you can see, he's put all his waste in there, but it's very, very dry. That's going to take a long time to decompose. And because his soil is so dry here, you're not even going to get worms attracted to that because it's just way too dry. They would never survive in that soil. So that's the reason for keeping moisture up to your soil. Now the reason, that's a great idea, but there's no air getting there. You'd have to put some holes in there. The other thing is you'll never stop a dog from getting into that, or a rat or something like that. Great idea, but it does have some drawbacks. I hate to say it, but the Compot, on the other hand, has a lockable lid, so the rats and the dogs can't get in there, unless of course you've got really big dogs, and then you don't want to put meat in there. But the other thing you should be doing with this is adding water to that, because it helps if those scraps are moist, and that also provides moisture for the worms. But we're going to go over here now and plant a pot over here where Bill's dug a hole. Actually, let me get the pot, Murray. I can cut this bit out. Okay, so we were discussing with Bill. Now, Bill, actually, that needs to go deeper. Okay.
Deeper, yep.
The idea is that if it's only up to there, then you're going to get little critters trying to dig down and get the soldier fly larvae.
Yeah, yep.
Now, the reason this works so effectively is that you don't need worms in this system to make it work. So if you've got dry soil like this, your worms just will not survive in that. The other thing is, if you're just putting worm food in there, so you don't put meat in there, you don't put, what don't worms like? Citrus, onions, oil, dairy, all of those things, and you just put worm-friendly food in there, you can add worms to it, and they will just live in the pot. But they won't spread the goodness around the garden, because they literally can't move in that soil. They'll die. But the beauty of this pot is that the soldier flies can survive in just about anything. So they'll be decomposing all that food, and you can put everything in there. So your meat, your citrus, onions, oil, everything from your kitchen. There's nothing I don't put in there. And they'll do all the hard work. Once that soil starts becoming all nice and moist from all the juices coming off it, then your worms can survive in the soil. And when the soldier flies, let's say you leave your pot and you don't fill it up for a month, all the soldier flies, they'll bury out into the soil, and they will either hibernate there over winter, or they'll mature, they'll mate, they'll lay their eggs again, and then they'll die. So you don't ever have to worry about them. But there was a point I was getting to there. But once that soil starts getting moistened, then the worms can live in that soil. And when those soldier flies have all vacated the pot, if you haven't fed it, say, for a month, the worms will move in, and then they will finish it off, and they try and then level out the soil. So they'll try and fill the pot up with composted soil, so you get this pot of beautiful composted soil. Now, depending on what you put in there, it'll either be half full, it'll be full, depending on the time you left it. There's all kinds of different factors. That's great if you want to harvest the soil, but if you don't want to harvest the soil, just keep topping it up. So the idea is, you don't have to wait for everything to decompose, just keep topping it up, and just let it look after itself. And then, so you need to dig a slightly bigger hole here, okay, to get that level with the ground, okay? And then, very important with this, to cover it with your grass clippings or, now you don't have to, but we live in a hot climate, so the hot sun will just dry that out. No good for your worms, again, too dry, the heat will kill them. So by covering it, it keeps that moisture in there and that coolness in there. It also protects it during winter, so you'll find in winter, when the soldier flies are actually hibernating in the soil, the worms will move in because it's nice and warm in there. But the worms only come in once the food's ready for them to eat, because if it's full of citrus or stuff that kills worms, they won't touch it until it's decomposed enough, and then they'll move in. So you'll find you'll get worms in there in winter.
Should I, because the soil's so dry, have I got too much mulch on top?
No, the mulch is great for keeping the moisture in the soil. What you don't have is any water. You need to be watering this more. But the problem with raised garden beds, and I think raised garden beds are great if you've got a bad back or something like that and you can't bend down to the ground and do stuff, but the water just drains out of them too quickly. So ideally you want to have some sort of covering at the bottom, retaining that water, and then have it like a wick thing where there's, you know, wicker beds, I'm a bit sceptical about them. But if you've got something stopping that water draining out, you'll keep the moisture in the bottom of there, so the plants can find their way down to that moisture. The other thing is you add zeolite into your soil, and that will hold water. So you need quite a bit in this dry soil to maintain that water, and then you definitely need to be watering it more often.
Okay.
But again, you can't dig this up now because you've already done it, right? So definitely you need more water to it.
Okay.
Having said that, if you collect your scraps every day on your kitchen sink in a pot, and you put all your wastewater in there with it, so every time you rinse out a milk bottle or a jam jar or anything where you've got wastewater, cooking your peas, any wastewater, put it in with your scraps.
So there's no threat with water going into the pot at all, mixing with food scraps?
No, not at all. In fact, the more water, the better.
Okay.
If you've got your scraps sitting on your kitchen sink, and you're like me, you only empty your scraps once a week, as long as your scraps are covered in that water, they won't smell.
Okay.
But if you've put milk in there, it can go off a bit quicker. But sometimes you can leave it for up to 10 days before. That's how busy I've got. And sometimes it'll be 10 days, then it'll be on the nose. But say within 5 days, it's very safe to put your scraps, cover it with water. The decomposition process starts. They will soften, makes it decompose even quicker again. And not only that, then instead of wasting that water down your drain, it's all going into your garden. So that's less water you have to be putting on your garden.
After my last experience where that turned to sludge, I was trying to dry it out.
No.
What I should have done is tip more water in it.
Yes, but see, that's a different system because that's sort of working differently. It's designed differently to this. But what you need to make that work is to add some holes in it. But again, because
it's got holes in the bottom and all around the sides.
Yes, but that's only to drain stuff out. But it's not letting air in there either. And that's fine if you just want to put worms in there because it doesn't matter if it's not aerated with worms, but it's going to be really slow. Worms take a really long time to decompose stuff. Well, actually, the truth is worms eat decomposed food. So the food actually has to break down before they'll eat it.
Okay.
And that's why they tell you on other shows you've got to chop all the food up because the smaller it is, the quicker it'll decompose. But I haven't got time for that. I just toss my stuff in and let it look after itself. Try it, and again, if you're doing that just for worms, and maybe those worms I bought you, let's put some in there and see what happens. And I'll come back in a week and have a look.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're just putting worms in there, what was my point?
About breaking it
you
down.
can only put worm food in there. You cannot put citrus in there, or meat, or dairy, or onions, or oil.
So just vegetable matter.
Yes, exactly. Whereas this, everything from your kitchen, paper towel, and if you don't have a lot of waste every week, you can actually the worm one, that'd be good to put paper in because worms they break down, but they take a long time. It's a slow process.
Tea bags and
everything in here, absolutely everything. There's nothing I haven't put in here. Dog poo even. In fact, with your dog, put one up away from your veggies if you've got veggies like this, and put your dog poo in there. And again, make sure there's some water in there with it, because dog poo dries out. It's really moist. It needs to have moisture in there, otherwise, it'll take a long time for the worms to find it.
And is the soil nutrient from dog poo okay for
well, once the worms have broken it down, then it's fine. It's not if it's medicated dog poo, not great. But beside a big tree, it's hardly going to do much harm, is it? And especially if you've got water in there. And as you water your plants, the water will go into the pot and it'll dilute those medicines and it'll flush out through the soil.
So we do generate a bit of dog poo. So could you use a bigger thing using that type of system there?
You could, but it'd get really stinchy and smelly, And also, the bigger they are, it takes too long to decompose. So again, that's the beauty of this size. Decomposes much faster. The other thing is, if you've got a big pot in your garden and that lid, someone stepped on that, they'd just go straight through it. Exactly. So you're looking at somebody hurting themselves. This is actually weighted. I've jumped on these, and the only thing that will happen, it'll just push in a bit. So these won't break. That you can tell you just go straight through it. It's too flimsy.
Well, I'll try that with the dog. I'll try the other one with the dog.
That would be fantastic. So
and
if I could,
and tip water into it every time you drop something.
Exactly. And it's again because the dog poo is really dry. The worms don't even touch it when it's that dry. So that'd be a great experiment. But again, dig this out a bit more, level with the ground, and up the back too, especially for your dog. Because if he smells his own dog poo and he likes his own dog poo, he might like to try and get in there.
I used to have a Labrador who did that. It was pretty off-putting.
Anyway,
all right.
you happy with all that?
Yeah, thank you.
Any
Yep.
other questions you can think of?
No. If you're coming back in a couple of weeks, I'll give it a whirl and then
Write some things down and keep a list of questions you need to
But the
ask.
added watering is
Makes a massive difference.
Yep. Okay.
Not necessarily good in a worm farm because you could drown your worms, but
Yep.
because you've got that one in the ground, as long as the water can drain out, then it's okay.
Yep.
But if it can't drain out, they're going to drown.
But it's also around the outside of the pot as well.
Absolutely. If you
Sure.
want to attract worms to your garden,
Yep.
they just can't move in that.
Yeah.
So those worms I've given you, if you're going to put some in there,
Yep.
just with your worm scraps, so you can breed some up, but you need to moisten this soil definitely much more for them to survive.
All right.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Put
Phil.
that in place. Thanks.